My HOA fined me $15,000 for planting unauthorized flowers in my own yard. When I refused to remove them, the president screamed, "This is my community, and you'll obey my rules." I dug into his finances, and what I exposed at the next meeting had the entire board gasping in horror. I never thought planting a few flowers could turn my life upside down. Living in a suburban neighborhood in Austin, Texas, I always took pride in my home and yard. The community had a homeowners association, HOA, but they mostly kept to themselves. That changed when Rick Davenport became the HOA president. His leadership quickly became known for strict rules and heavy fines. It all started when I decided to add some color to my front yard. After researching native Texas plants, I chose bluebonnets, Indian paintbrushes, and black-eyed Susans. I spent a weekend planting them, and soon my yard was full of vibrant colors. Neighbors often stopped to compliment the new look. A week later, I received a letter from the HOA. It stated that I had violated community guidelines by planting unauthorized flora and imposed a $500 fine. I was shocked. The HOA rules mentioned needing approval for structural changes, but said nothing about plants. I decided to address the issue directly. I attended the next HOA meeting at the community center near our neighborhood entrance. The room was filled with residents, many of whom seemed frustrated. When it was my turn to speak, I explained that the guidelines didn't mention needing approval for planting flowers and that my plants were native and enhanced the community's appearance. Rick Davenport, a man in his late 50s with a stern look, was unmoved. He insisted that all changes required approval and that my failure to seek permission warranted the fine. His dismissive attitude was frustrating. I left the meeting determined to find a solution. Over the next few days, I reviewed the HOA's bylaws and spoke with neighbors who had faced similar issues. I discovered that Rick had a history of imposing fines for minor infractions, often without clear justification. This pattern suggested a misuse of power that many residents were growing tired of. Determined to challenge the fine, I gathered support from fellow homeowners. I drafted a petition highlighting the need for clearer guidelines and fair enforcement practices. Going door to door, I spoke with neighbors, many of whom shared their own grievances with the HOA. Within a week, I had collected over 100 signatures. Armed with the petition, I requested a special meeting with the HOA board. During the session, I presented our collective concerns, emphasizing the need for transparency and consistency in rule enforcement. I also proposed forming a committee of homeowners to review and revise the existing guidelines to prevent future misunderstandings. The board was taken aback by the level of organization and support behind the petition. After some deliberation, they agreed to waive my fine and establish the proposed committee. This victory was not just personal, it signified a shift towards a more collaborative and fair approach to community governance. In the following months, the committee worked diligently to update the HOA guidelines, ensuring they were clear and equitable. The experience fostered a renewed sense of community and demonstrated the power of collective action in addressing unjust practices. Reflecting on the ordeal, I realized that while HOAs are designed to maintain community standards, they must operate transparently and fairly. Homeowners should be encouraged to participate actively in governance to ensure that the association serves the best interests of all residents. My garden continues to flourish, serving as a reminder of the positive change that can result from standing up against unfair treatment. The vibrant blooms not only beautify my home, but also symbolize the resilience and unity of our community. So, everything seemed to settle down after that meeting. Rick backed off. The fine was dropped. The new landscaping committee started meeting once a month in my garage with donuts and a folding table. We were finally starting to feel like we had a say in our own neighborhood. But of course, Rick wasn't done. A month later, I get another letter taped to my door. Not mailed. Taped. In red ink. Due to continued noncompliance and hostile behavior, your property is now subject to escalating fines of $15,000 until corrected. This is my community, and you'll obey the rules. Rick Davenport, HOA president. Yes, He wrote, "My community," in handwriting that looked like it was done by someone squeezing the life out of a Sharpie. I thought it was a joke. $15,000 for flowers? But I checked the HOA website, and he had pushed through an emergency vote, just 2 board members, and updated the bylaws retroactively. According to the new rule, non-conforming flora could now be considered visual obstructions that damaged community image. This dude was losing his mind. I called the HOA legal office listed on the website. The lady on the phone sighed and said, "You're not the first person to call about him. But our hands are tied unless the board votes him out." Great. The board? His buddies? The same people who all play poker in his garage every Friday night? Now I was angry. I wasn't going to let some retired tyrant fine me for planting legal, native flowers in my own yard. That was when I decided to go deeper. I wanted to find out who exactly Rick Davenport was, and why he was so obsessed with control. I'm no hacker, but I know how to Google, check public records, and dig through online property databases. Took me a few late nights, but what I found made my stomach turn. Rick wasn't just some angry old guy with too much time on his hands. He was broke. His house? Mortgaged to the max. He'd pulled a second loan on it last year. His business? Shut down 3 years ago. He was surviving on HOA payments, legally getting compensated for consulting and administrative work. The guy had slowly turned our HOA into his own personal income stream. But that wasn't the worst part. Hidden in plain sight on the county website were contracts. Landscaping, painting, community maintenance. All signed by Rick. All going to a shell company, Green Point Services, LLC. Registered under someone named Bradley Davenport. Rick's son. So he'd created a fake company, hired his son, approved contracts using HOA funds, and funneled tens of thousands of dollars to his own family. All while threatening us with fines for not trimming hedges or planting bluebonnets. I printed everything. All the contracts. The signatures. Even screenshots from the Better Business Bureau showing Greenpoint had no license, no staff, and 1-star reviews from fake jobs across the county. I didn't just want to stop the fine anymore. I wanted the entire community to see who this guy really was. So I planned it out. I didn't call a meeting. I called for a public emergency session, which under our bylaws could be demanded if 20% of the homeowners signed a request. I walked door to door. I didn't beg. I showed people the documents. And every single one of them, even the quiet retirees who usually kept to themselves, signed it. It only took 48 hours. We scheduled the meeting for a Saturday afternoon at the community center. I made sure we had extra chairs. It was standing room only. I walked in with a thick binder in my hands, a laptop under my arm, and about 90 people behind me. Rick showed up late. I don't think he expected that many people. He looked around and actually tried to smile, like we were all just there for a cookout. That smile died fast. I didn't even need to say much. I handed out packets, projected screenshots on the wall, laid out the timeline. The board sat silent. You could hear people whispering, then gasping, then getting angry. When I finished, I stood there in silence. Rick tried to talk. He started yelling about misinterpretation and fake news. But nobody cared. They'd seen the truth. And then someone from the back shouted, "Call a vote." And that's when things got even messier. Rick didn't take the vote well. The room was hot with tension. People stood up and started chanting, "Vote, vote, vote," like it was a high school pep rally, only instead of school spirit, it was fueled by months of pent-up HOA rage. The board looked scared. These weren't the same calm retirees who nodded along at Rick's meetings. These were furious homeowners holding signed affidavits and screenshots of shady contracts. Rick tried to gavel the meeting closed, but someone, I swear it was Mrs. Blackwell from 2B, snatched the gavel and yelled, "You work for us, not the other way around." They voted. And right then and there, in front of half the neighborhood, Rick was suspended pending investigation. But the drama didn't end there. Later that night, I noticed my motion sensor camera picked up activity at 2:14 a.m. I checked the feed. It was Rick. He had parked down the street and crept onto my property, wearing gloves, carrying a canister. At first I thought he was going to vandalize something, spray paint maybe, or damage the flowers. But he did something worse. He poured a thick, cloudy liquid all over my flower beds. And just like that, every single plant I had lovingly nurtured, dead within 48 hours. I reported it, filed a police report, handed them the footage. But Rick, being Rick, had excuses lined up. I was checking for pest control violations. I thought it was my friend's house. I had a bad night. Cops couldn't do much without clear proof of the substance. But now I was beyond angry. I wasn't just going to expose Rick. I wanted him out, and I wanted him to pay. Then another twist came from a totally unexpected source. I got a knock on my door. It was Angela, Rick's ex-wife. We'd never talked before. She lived a few blocks away in a newer part of the subdivision. She looked tired but determined. "I heard what you're doing," she said. "I have something you might want." Turns out, she had boxes of old HOA files, stuff Rick used to store in their garage when he was first on the board. She handed me a manila folder labeled Personal, Do Not File. Inside were handwritten notes, dated years back. Rick's own handwriting, laying out how he could shift HOA expenses into private payouts through dummy vendors. There were even drafts of emails he never sent, talking about invoices that need to look real and submitting duplicates slowly. But the bombshell? A scanned invoice addressed to Greenpoint Services for a $9,800 community drainage inspection that never happened, with Rick's signature at the bottom. And a note, submit through Bradley's account before audit. That was enough. I handed the files over to a lawyer in the neighborhood, a guy named Stan who had retired last year but was more than happy to take this on pro bono. He said if we could show misuse of HOA funds with real proof and community backing, we could initiate a full forensic audit. The audit was approved. And then came the real avalanche. More fake contracts. More missing funds. Services that had never been performed. Invoices paid to companies that didn't exist. And even worse, a few of the other board members had approved them. Rick wasn't working alone. So now we weren't just dealing with one bad apple. It was a small group of them, funneling HOA money into side pockets for years, hiding behind bureaucracy and intimidating anyone who spoke up. We brought in an outside auditor. Had an emergency re-election. Froze all HOA payments until things could be reviewed. But Rick? He didn't go quietly. Rick didn't just slink away after the audit started. 2 weeks after we froze the HOA's spending, a local news crew showed up in the neighborhood. Rick had contacted them, claiming he was being harassed by radical homeowners who had launched a witch hunt against him for trying to protect community standards. He even faked an injury. Showed up on the news wearing a neck brace and holding a cane, saying I assaulted him during a heated confrontation. There was a confrontation, caught on security camera. He'd come storming onto my porch, yelling about lawsuits and being targeted, and when I told him to leave and started filming, he threw himself backward into the bushes like he was trying out for a movie role. The clip went viral in the local Facebook groups. Someone edited it to dramatic music. Even kids in the neighborhood were reenacting the Rick fall. But Rick wasn't giving up. He lawyered up. Sued me, the audit committee, even the HOA board for character defamation, emotional distress, and loss of income. That was the part one hadn't expected. I thought we had him dead to rights. But lawsuits mean stress. They mean money. They mean time. And it started to wear on me. I missed work. I stopped sleeping. My savings took a hit. At one point, I asked myself, why did I even start this? Over some flowers? That's where I made my mistake. I got sloppy. I sent an angry email to a group of homeowners. In it, I called Rick a thief, a fraud, and said he deserved to rot in jail. I even joked that we should salt his lawn the way he poisoned mine. I was venting. But Rick's lawyer got hold of that email. It ended up in court. And though the judge didn't dismiss our audit results, he did say my email compromised the integrity of the process. That was a big hit to our case. It gave Rick's team enough wiggle room to push a settlement. The HOA board, what was left of it, didn't want to keep bleeding money in legal fees. So they agreed. Rick would resign quietly, return $42,000, and none of it would be reported to the state attorney's office. No jail time. No public record. Just a handshake, a check, and a gag order. I was furious. All that work. All that energy. For what? He walked away like nothing happened. But then, something happened. Rick moved out 3 months later. Quietly, without a goodbye. His house went on the market, listed under a real estate agent out of Houston. Rumor was he left town completely. And about a month later, Bradley, his son, was arrested in another state. Fraud charges tied to a landscaping scam. Different HOA, same tricks. Guess crime ran in the family. As for me, the board asked if I wanted to take over as president. I said no. I'd had enough of meetings, rules, and neighbors fighting over lawn paint colors. But I didn't walk away either. I stayed on the new committee. Helped rewrite the entire bylaws. Made sure every homeowner now had access to financial records. No more Rick loopholes. No more rubber stamp contracts. No more shady meetings. The garden? I replanted every flower Rick had killed. But this time, I added one more row, a thick line of thorny, bright red Texas lantana right along the border. It looked beautiful. But more importantly, it made a statement.